The soft hum of the heater filled the room, mingling with the quiet rustle of the cat shifting in its makeshift bed. Amelia stood by the counter, watching it with a mix of curiosity and tenderness as it cautiously lapped at the dish of milk. Every few moments, its luminous green eyes darted to hers, wary but no longer fearful. There was a profound weight in its gaze, as though it were silently thanking her while guarding secrets it wasn't ready to share. The evening unfolded with a strange sense of calm, Amelia moving through her routine with the cat always in her peripheral vision. She couldn't help but wonder about its story. Had it been abandoned, lost? The slight limp suggested an injury, but the way it carried itself hinted at a resilience born from hardship. As she sat back down by the window, now dimly illuminated by a crescent moon, the thoughts drifted to how such a small, fragile creature could endure. Outside, the world seemed hushed, as if waiting. The silhouette of bare tree branches swayed gently in the night breeze, their skeletal forms casting faint shadows against her walls. Amelia, still holding her half-finished cup of tea, glanced down at the cat. What kind of life had this little creature led before it found its way to report? Unable to resist, Amelia retrieved a soft towel and a small basin of warm water. She approached cautiously, not wanting to disturb the cat, but as she reached out, its eyes fluttered open. For a moment they stared at each other, a silent understanding passing between them. Amelia spoke softly, her voice a balm against the quiet. "Let me help you, okay?" To her relief, the cat didn't flinch or struggle as she gently began to clean its fur. The process was slow, each stroke of the damp towel revealing a little more of the tabby's true color beneath the dirt and grime. She worked with care, pausing whenever the cat shifted or seemed uncomfortable. When she was done, she sat back and surveyed her work. The cat seemed different now, less like a lost stray and more like a creature reclaiming its dignity. It stretched, testing its muscles, and then, to Amelia's surprise, leaped onto her lap. She froze for a moment, caught off guard, but then a soft smile spread across her face as the cat began to purr, a low, rumbling sound that seemed to vibrate straight through her chest. "You're not just passing through, are you?" she asked softly, running her fingers along the now clean fur. The cat responded with a contented nudge of its head against her hand, as if to say, "No, I'm here to stay." As the hours passed and the night deepened, Amelia found herself talking to the cat as though it were an old friend. She told it about her life, how she'd moved to the neighborhood after leaving the bustle of the city, how her days were filled with work and quiet evenings that often felt a little too lonely. She hadn't realized just how much she missed having someone, or something, to share her space with. By the time she finally carried the cat to a cozy corner in her bedroom, laying it gently on a fresh blanket, the bond between them felt undeniable. She climbed into bed, the rhythmic sound of the cat's purring filling the room like a lullaby. In the quiet darkness, Amelia couldn't shake the sense that this moment was the start of something significant. The cat, now curled into a ball at the foot of her bed, seemed almost like a guardian, a scrappy, mysterious sentinel that had wandered into her life at just the right time, and as sleep overtook her, one thought lingered in her mind. Perhaps they had both found each other when they needed it most. The next morning, sunlight poured through the sheer curtains of Amelia's modest home, casting golden streaks across the wooden floor. The soft sound of purring filled the room, blending harmoniously with the cheerful chirping of birds outside. Amelia stirred awake to find the gray and white tabby nestled at her feet, its piercing green eyes half closed in content. She smiled, the warmth of the moment filling her chest. Stretching, she slipped out of bed and headed to the kitchen, the cat following closely behind like a shadow. "Well, good morning, little one," she said, her voice still husky with sleep. "I guess you're hungry." She rummaged through her pantry and found a can of tuna, which the cat devoured with unbridled enthusiasm. Watching him eat, Amelia felt a growing fondness for the scrappy creature. After breakfast, she decided it was time to give her guest a proper name. "Oliver," she said aloud, testing the sound of it. The cat paused mid-lick its paw, its ears twitching as if in acknowledgement. "Oliver, it is," she said with a chuckle, stroking his softening fur. As she cleaned him more thoroughly, Amelia noticed something odd. A thin scar ran along the edge of Oliver's left ear, a faint but unmistakable mark. Her fingers also brushed against his neck, where the fur felt slightly worn, as though he'd once worn a collar. Her brow furrowed. Oliver wasn't just a stray. He had a story, a life before he stumbled onto her porch. Her curiosity piqued. Amelia decided to investigate. She snapped a few photos of Oliver, capturing his distinct markings and striking eyes, and posted them on local forums and social media groups. The caption was simple: "Found near Maple Street, a gray and white tabby with green eyes. Does anyone recognize him?" The responses came quickly but brought more questions than answers. Several neighbors mentioned seeing a similar-looking cat over the years, sometimes in their yards, other times perched on fences or darting across streets, but no one had ever claimed him. One neighbor said she'd seen the cat at least 5 years ago but thought it belonged to someone else. Another mentioned spotting him near the old rail. The most intriguing response came from an elderly man who lived a few blocks away. He sent Amelia a private message. "That cat looks like Oliver. If it's the same one, he's been around for decades. People say he belonged to a young woman who lived here a long time ago, back when this neighborhood was first built. But she disappeared. Some say the cat kept waiting for her to come back. Others say he seemed to know." Amelia's heart quickened as she read the message. It sounded like the beginning of a ghost story, the kind of tale whispered around campfires. Could it be true? How could Oliver, clearly just a cat, have been around for so long? She decided to pay the man a visit to learn more. Later that afternoon, she bundled up against the chill and made her way to the man's home, a quaint bungalow adorned with wind chimes and an overgrown garden. He greeted her warmly, his weathered face lighting up when he saw Oliver peeking out of her coat. "This little guy's a legend around here," the man said, settling into a creaky armchair. He recounted a story that had been passed down by the neighborhood's older residents. Decades ago, a young woman named Clara lived in the very house Amelia now called home. She was kind, quiet, and often seen with a cat that looked just like Oliver. Clara had fallen on hard times, and one day, without warning, some said she'd left to start a new life elsewhere. Others feared something darker had happened. But her cat had stayed behind, wandering the streets as if searching for her. Over the years, sightings of the cat became less frequent, until it was almost forgotten in the sleepy neighborhood. Amelia listened, her mind racing. Could Oliver really be the same cat? It seemed impossible, but the coincidences were too many to ignore. As she walked home with Oliver nestled in her arms, her thoughts swirled with questions. Who had Clara been? And if Oliver truly was her cat, why had he returned now, after all this time? Back at home, Amelia set Oliver down and began digging through old newspaper archives online, hoping to uncover more about Clara and the mysterious cat. With every piece of information she uncovered, the story grew more tangled and compelling, pulling Amelia deeper into the mystery of Oliver's past. Driven by her growing attachment to Oliver and the ever-deepening mystery surrounding him, Amelia's curiosity became an obsession. Every free moment was spent piecing together fragments of the past. She began with the local library, where she pored over brittle, yellowed newspapers and dusty records. Days turned into weeks as she followed every lead, her determination unwavering. Then she found it, an article buried deep in the archives dated 20 years ago. The headline read, "Tragic Fire Claims Farmhouse, Family's Livelihood Destroyed." The accompanying story detailed a devastating blaze that had consumed a farmhouse on the outskirts of town. The family, a couple and their 2 children, had escaped with their lives, but not without a harrowing loss. Their youngest child, a boy of 5, had gone missing during the chaos. Rescuers believed the child had become disoriented in the smoke. Witnesses claimed to have seen the family's gray and white tabby cat frantically darting in and out of the burning home as if trying to guide somebody. The story sent shivers down Amelia's spine. Could Oliver be the same cat from the article? It seemed improbable, but the similarities were striking, and the mention of the cat's bravery stirred something deep within her. a sense that Oliver was more than just a stray who had wandered into her life. Her resolve strengthened, Amelia decided to visit the site of the tragedy. The farmhouse, she learned, had remained in ruins, left untouched and forgotten over the years. With Oliver riding quietly at a carrier, she drove to the outskirts of town, where fields gave way to a cluster of overgrown trees. The skeletal remains of the farmhouse loomed ahead, its charred beams reaching skyward like the bones of a long-dead giant. As she stepped onto the property, a strange sensation washed over her. The air felt heavier, charged with an almost tangible energy. Oliver, who had been calm throughout the ride, began to stir the moment she opened the carrier. He leapt out gracefully, his green eyes scanning the ruins with an intensity that startled her. "Do you know this place?" she whispered, half to herself and half to the cat. Oliver padded forward, his movements deliberate, as if he were following a trail invisible to Amelia. He stopped at a patch of earth near what had once been the front porch and began pawing at the ground, his soft meows rising into urgent cries. Amelia hesitated, unsure of what to do, but Oliver's insistence left no room for doubt. Dropping to her knees, she began digging with her hands, the soil cold and damp beneath her fingers. It didn't take long before her hands struck something solid. She unearthed a small, rusted tin box, its hinges creaking as she pried it open. Inside was a collection of items preserved by the years, a faded photograph of a young family standing proudly in front of the farmhouse, their smiles radiant, a child crayon drawing of a stick figure family with a cat at their feet, and a delicate locket containing a miniature portrait of the chief. Amelia's breath caught in her throat as she examined the contents. The photograph was hauntingly beautiful, the kind that told an entire story in a single frame. The child's drawing was simple but poignant, its innocence underscoring the weight of what had been lost. But it was the locket that moved her most, a precious keepsake, tarnished but intact, its hinges smooth as she opened it to reveal the faces of a family frozen in time. Oliver sat quietly beside her now, his earlier urgency replaced by a serene stillness. He gazed at the box's contents with an expression that seemed almost no. "What happened to you?" Amelia murmured, her voice trembling. "Were you there, Cat? Did you survive the fire?" Her mind raced with possibilities. If Oliver truly was the cat from the article, then he had been a witness to tragedy, a living link to a past filled with love and loss. And if he had led her to this box, what did it mean? Was he guiding her towards something? Closure, perhaps? Or an answer that had been buried for decades? Amelia carefully packed the items back into the tin and carried it to her car, Oliver trailing close behind. She resolved to find out more about the family from the fire. What had become of them? Did they ever find peace after their loss? And what role had Oliver or a cat like him played in their story? As they drove home, Amelia glanced at Oliver, who was curled up on the passenger seat, his green eyes blinking lazily at her. "You're not just a cat," she said softly, her voice tinged with awe. "You're a puzzle. And I'm going to solve you." What she didn't know was that the discovery of the tin box was only the beginning. Oliver had opened a door to the past, and what lay beyond would change Amelia's life in ways she could never have imagined. Determined to uncover the full story, Amelia used the photograph and locket as her guiding clues. After weeks of digging through public records and online searches, she managed to track down Emily, the young girl from the photograph. Now in her late 20s, Emily lived in a nearby city and worked as a schoolteacher. Nervous but resolute, Amelia reached out, explaining her discovery and the mysterious cat she believed to be connected to Emily's past. When Emily received the message, it was as though a door she had long thought closed was suddenly flung open. She replied almost immediately, her words brimming with curiosity and emotion. She had often thought about their family cat Oscar over the years. He had been her constant companion during her early childhood, a source of comfort and joy. Though her family had searched for weeks afterward, they had never found any trace of Oscar. To hear that he might still be alive filled Emily with an overwhelming mix of hope and disbelief. A reunion was arranged at Amelia's home. The day arrived with a crispness in the air, the kind that hinted at the changing seasons. Amelia waited anxiously by the window, Oliver perched beside her as though sensing the significance of the moment. When Emily finally arrived, stepping out of her car with hesitant steps, Amelia's heart raced. The moment Emily walked through the door, her eyes locked on Oliver. Time seemed to stand still. "Oscar?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Oliver's ears perked up at the sound, his green eyes widening as he leapt gracefully from the windowsill and padded toward her. Emily sank to her knees, her hands trembling as she reached out. It's you," she said, tears spilling freely down her face. Oliver closed the distance, pressing his head against Emily's outstretched hand. The connection was immediate, as though the years between them had melted away. Emily's tears fell onto his soft fur as she cradled him, her voice breaking with emotion. "I never thought I'd see you again." Amelia watched from the sidelines, moved by the raw intensity of the moment. The bond between Emily and Oliver, Oscar, as she now knew him, was undeniable. Emily stroked the scar on his ear, the same scar her Oscar had gotten as a kitten from a tumble off the porch. It was the final confirmation she needed. "It really is him," Emily said, her voice thick with disbelief and joy. "After all these..." The hours that followed were filled with stories, laughter, and tears. Emily recounted her memories of Oscar, how he'd been her protector during thunderstorms, how he'd always waited for her by the school gate, and how he'd comforted her during the difficult times before the fire. Amelia shared her own experiences with Oliver, marveling at the twists of fate that had brought them together. Emily explained how the fire had upended their lives. Her family had struggled to rebuild, eventually moving away to start fresh, but the loss of Oscar had always lingered like an unhealed wound. To see him again, alive and well, felt like reclaiming a piece of her childhood she thought she had lost forever. By evening, Emily and Amelia sat together, Oliver curled up contentedly in Emily's lap. "I don't know how he survived all this time," Emily said, her voice filled with wonder. "But he found his way back, didn't he? He always was fashionable." Amelia smiled, a warm sense of fulfillment washing over her. "He's more than special, he's extraordinary." Though it was clear Oliver and Emily shared a deep bond, Emily insisted that Amelia keep him. "You saved him," she said. "You gave him a home when he needed it most. He's yours now. But maybe I could visit sometime." "Of course," Amelia replied, without hesitation. "He's brought us together after all." As Emily left that evening, her heart lighter than it had been in years, Amelia sat by the window with Oliver once more. The moonlight cast a soft glow on his gray and white fur, and his green eyes seemed to shine with a quiet satisfaction. "You've been through so much, haven't you?" Amelia whispered, scratching behind his ear. "But you found your way back to where you belong." Oliver purred softly, a sound that spoke of contentment and perhaps even closure. In that moment, Amelia realized that Oliver wasn't just a bridge to Emily's past, he was a testament to resilience, love, and the unbreakable bonds that can withstand even the longest of separations. And as she sat there, a deep sense of gratitude filled her heart, for Oliver, for Emily, and for the extraordinary journeys they had shared. As the reunion drew to a close, Emily sat with Oliver curled in her lap, his contented purring filling the room. She stroked his soft fur, her eyes brimming with both joy and bittersweet emotion. "I never imagined I'd see him again," she said softly, glancing at Amelia. "It feels like a piece of my..." Amelia smiled, though her heart ached at the thought of saying goodbye. Over the weeks, Oliver had become more than just a pet. He was a companion, a confidant, and a reminder of the unexpected ways life could surprise her. The idea of her home without his quiet presence left an emptiness she wasn't ready to face. Still, she knew Emily had a rightful claim to him. "He belongs with you," Amelia said, her voice faltering slightly. "You're his family." Emily looked at her thoughtfully. "But so are you," she said, surprising Amelia. "You were the one who took him in, cared for him, and helped uncover his story. I see how much he means to you. I don't think I could take him away completely." Amelia blinked, not quite believing what she was hearing. "What do you mean?" Emily smiled. "Why not share him? He's already brought us together. Why not let him keep connecting our lives? He could stay with me sometimes, and with you the rest of the time. It feels right, like he's meant to be part of both our world." Amelia felt a wave of relief and gratitude wash over her. "You'd really do that?" "Of course," Emily said firmly. "Oscar, Oliver, has spent years bridging the past and present. He deserves to have both his families. And, honestly, I'd love to keep in touch with you. You've become part of his story now, too." The two women laughed, the tension of the moment melting into shared warmth. They began to make plans, deciding how to balance Oliver's time between their homes. Emily promised to visit often, and Amelia eagerly agreed to meet up whenever possible. They even joked about creating a shared calendar for Oliver's schedule, a testament to the special place the resilient Tabby had claimed in their heart. When the time came for Emily to leave, she gently placed Oliver back in Amelia's arms. "I'll come for him next week." As Emily drove away, Amelia stood by the window, watching the tail lights fade into the evening. Oliver sat perched on the windowsill beside her, his green eyes gazing out at the quiet street. In the days and weeks that followed, the shared arrangement worked seamlessly. Oliver spent his time moving between Amelia's cozy home and Emily's bustling apartment, becoming a bridge between two lives and two stories. He adapted with his usual grace, carrying with him a quiet wisdom that seemed to inspire everyone he touched. For Amelia, life was forever changed. The stray cat who had wandered onto her porch had brought with him an extraordinary tale of resilience, love, and connection. Oliver wasn't just a pet. He was a living symbol of the enduring power of bonds that transcended time and hardship. He had taught her to embrace the unexpected, to find meaning in the ordinary, and to open her heart to the possibility of new beginnings. And so the story ended not with a farewell, but with hope. Oliver's presence continued to weave a tapestry of connection between Amelia and Emily, reminding them both that even in the face of loss and uncertainty, love has a way of finding its way back, sometimes in the form of a scruffy gray and white tabby cat with piercing green eyes and a story to tell. In the end, Oliver wasn't just a cat, he was a bridge between past and present, a living reminder that love, once found, never truly fades. Through him, Amelia and Emily discovered that some connections are meant to heal and endure, no matter the years or distance. The lesson of Oliver's story is that love and connection transcend time and hardship. Even the smallest of bonds can carry deep meaning, and sometimes the most unexpected encounters bring healing and a sense of belonging, reminding us that we are never truly alone in our journey.